geht's euch gut?
How are you guys doing? It's been a little
It's been a while since we shot our last video. Sorry. Things have been crazy for me at work and...
For me too. We're both working. So we're partly trying to record things, but it doesn't always work.
It doesn't always work out.
So we're really sorry. But we appreciate every support we've been having.
Yeah, thank you for all the subscriptions, all the likes and the comments, and thank you for keeping it all positive, because sometimes you get like negative and racist feedbacks, but for you guys that have been supportive, you guys are the real heroes. So
yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the support. And on that same line of topic, today we'll be having a race talk. Woo! Favorite topic.
So we both, most of the times we both have our mornings together on Saturdays, and we talk about different topics in life, and we discuss about different views and different ways of thinking and mentality, and how I grew up or how my husband grew up. And a couple of weeks ago we had this really intense topics about racism or race, to be racist, that it's still a thing in our culture, and it's still not in my culture, but in general, I think worldwide, we still are dealing up till now with racism. If it's black or white, or if it's Asian and somebody else, or doesn't need to be necessarily color, but it can be, I don't know, just the culture thing as well. And I think we both want to...
We'd like to have a discussion about it, because we've had the discussions behind the scenes, behind the cameras, and so we thought maybe it would be a good idea to talk about this stuff in front of the camera. So this is not planned, we're just going to have a discussion. So it's not going to be perfectly made, but it's just us just putting our thoughts together about this issue. Because one of the ways of attacking racism is to raise awareness. It's not the only way, but it's one of the ways. And another way is that we need to acknowledge that it is real, because the more we deny it, then we can't really face it.
And I think with that to be said, it's not that we mostly concentrate on racism and we think everybody's racist. We do have our jokes, and we do, you know, we easygoing. So I just want to make that clear, that we're not, you know, focusing just on the negative side and just focusing on being, you know, against racism constantly. But I think it's good to be aware of what is going on. It's good to be aware about what is going on, but also as a Christian to believe that it's going to change. So that's why we're just having that easy conversation. If you don't want to be part of it, if you don't like it, then you can just watch another video.
Just click out.
Just click out. But for those who really are interested,
and for those of you who put like negative comments there, we have a system where we don't allow negative comments on our channels.
No.
So it's not going to get any attention. It's just going to be a waste of time. So we really want, we can receive constructive criticism. When you say, if there's something we could improve, we receive that. We don't only want like comments that says, oh, you are great. You can also tell us this can be improved and that can be improved, and we also receive that.
Yeah.
But just full on negative comments that has no basis, that is just racist and how do you call it, stupid or dumb, we don't allow them go on, because it doesn't help us and doesn't help our viewers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because what we want to do and what we want to do with this channel, why we're doing this channel, is because we want to grow, and we want to share of our lives, to help other people to grow. So that's
because
why.
As a couple right now, like for her, she's heard about racism and she's probably seen it in different ways. But now that we are an interracial couple, she's got to deal with this now on a very, very close basis. And she's beginning to realize what it looks like for someone who is another race from her. And she's beginning to identify the privileges. And I'm beginning to learn about what my role is also in this topic. Because although a lot of times we as black people, we are seen as the victims, which is true in a lot of the cases, but sometimes we also play a role in this. And so we'll be discussing from a different perspective. And she'll be saying, you know, what her role is, or her cultural role is, and I'll be talking about what our role is as, you know, as Africans, because
I think that backgrounds as well is important, because like my background is I'm not fully German, I'm not fully Swedish, so already had to deal a little bit in my life with some racial stuff in my life, because when I was in Germany I was Swedish, and when I was in Sweden I was German, so it was never really fully accepted. And I also were mostly that kind of child in school that would be together with those who weren't accepted. So I was surrounded by those who are maybe not German, Turkish, or different kind of cultures, and I protected them because I was really against racism, and I really hated you know, trying to put people away or not including people into groups. So that was my nature. And also early on I started to read a lot about Martin Luther King Jr. and had projects about him and wrote exams about him. So like it's always been a topic in my life. But I think I first experienced racism really, really crazy when I got married to my husband. That's where I really, not just only racism on the street where people would look at us, but racism in the way of people having assumptions about my husband and about me. Assumptions like, oh yeah, he's a refugee, you know, he just married me because of a visa, and you know, I'm so dumb getting. And that's
like one of the major ones. Like in Germany, you have a lot of African refugees, and so most people automatically assume that you're a refugee once you're black. I have no problem with being a refugee. I don't think that refugees are lesser than I am.
No,
but for you to assume that I'm a refugee just because I'm black, that tells me where you're coming from and your perspective.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, I'm not racist, but everything that you do or you say after you say I'm not racist just shows how racist you are. Yeah. And we're just here to throw more light in this because we are Christians, and we don't believe in just attacking this blindly, just out of emotions and out of anger, because it doesn't bring in a solution. So we're coming from a practical place, and we're also coming from a religious or a spiritual place where we say, how can we change this for good? How can we create an impact in this area in our own little way?
I think it's good for, like, if you marry to an African or another culture or another person that might be attacked because of his culture or even his color maybe. I think it's good for you. What I can give you as advice is good for you to stand your ground. To be kind and be loving, but stand your ground. And I didn't do that in the beginning, or I did it partly, but it was really hard for me. I even cried. I cried in front of people attacking my husband because I was so upset and I didn't know how to react to it. Now that I learned about this process and I learned and I experienced this, it is easier and it's getting easier for me to stand my ground and say, hey, this is not how my husband is. He's actually more educated than me and I am a German. So like, I think that's really, really important for somebody that is maybe in an interracial couple or interracial marriage or relationship to really stand your ground. That's where it all starts.
It's
to
important,
realize it and to stand your ground.
To use your privilege to defend those that are considered less privileged, you know?
Color,
to think that somebody is lesser than you, or even better than you, just because of how they look or the color of their skin, which they did nothing to get, which was given to them from their birth. To think that somebody is better than you just because of how they look, it's another form of ignorance and prejudice. For example, in the olden days, one of the first civilizations came from Egypt. And Egypt, as we know, is an African country. And back then, they were not white like the people are right now. And they had civilization before white people, you know. And they even had slaves then. They had, like in the Bible, we see that they even have the Israelites as slaves, okay? Now, those were the first civilization, and they considered themselves better. They considered themselves better than every other people, but they were not white. So it is not a new story, okay? It's just been recycled over and over again. And now we have more civilization in the West, and it makes them think now, because they have civilization right now, that they are better than every other person that does not. Human beings will always find a way to be prejudiced. Like, even if there was only one color on earth, we will find another way to separate ourselves and say this people from this country or this tribe is better than this tribe, because we will always find the way to divide ourselves. It comes natural to us. I'm from Nigeria, so when you talk about racism, we have like different categories, you know. We have racism against Africans, and then you have a special prejudice against Nigerians. So I go Nigerian, black, African. So I have like all the prejudice, you know, hipped on me, you know, in that order. So, and some of this happened because some of our people, our Nigerian brothers, did some things wrong when they came to the West. Like they would, you know, traffic drugs or provide fake documents, and that made a story for the whole Nigerian community.
It was not even a lot of people.
Not a lot of them, because Nigeria is close to 200 million people. So if the majority of us were scammers and tricksters and fraudsters, we're a lot. Germany is not even up to half our population. Okay? It's the minority that are being caught, that are being placed in the media. And so that creates the story for a whole people.
Good media, good things don't make a lot of, you know, publicity. It doesn't make, it's not interesting. People don't want to know that a farmer is doing well and is treating everybody good at home and is making money from what he has in the ground. Nobody wants to know that. People want to know the problems of the earth. They want to know the problems of the world. That's why mostly when they talk about Africans or Nigeria in itself, it has something to do with Boko Haram, has something to do with terror attacks, but in itself, like,
they never show the people and the positive culture.
Or the success they have.
That doesn't make no news. For example, we have a lot of Nigerians that are very successful business people all over the world. In America, in Germany, in different parts of the world. Like, because Nigerians have this spirit of hustling and they hardly give up. And so they push, and they're very good at what they do, whether good or bad. That's the thing. So when they use their gifts in the wrong direction, it creates a whole mess. But when they use it in the right way, they're very successful. Like, we have a lot of Nigerians in the States that are American Nigerians that are very top and very successful in schools, in professions.
There's this movie that came out about some doctor that invented something with the football. You know, there's a movie. Concussion. And he was originally in Nigeria. So, like, even that in itself, like, there's a lot of...
I think it was Will Smith who acted that movie. Not Will, I'm not sure. But the actor, it's based on a real life story where a Nigerian discovered the injury that you get from playing American football. And so we have a lot of Nigerians that have discovered stuff. But once they are very successul, you never hear about them as Nigerians.
No.
You hear about them as Americans or Germans or French. But when they're bad, they're completely Nigerian and African. There are a lot of inventions that were made by black people and African people, but the credit went to the Western or the white people, because as long as it's good, we did it. But once it's bad, it's yours. For example, in my family, like she said, when we got married, the first thing they thought was, you need to be careful, he's a Nigerian, he's an African, he's a black person, maybe the culture is different, he might abuse you, because they also assume that African men abuse their wives. But they also thought he just wants papers. I understand where that's coming from. We have a couple of Africans here in Germany or all over the world that are looking for papers.
And the truth is, I think that's important to say, the truth is it is hard. It is hard when you're not German or not American or not European to actually get out of the country. In itself, it is hard because there's already so much racism and so much fight against the African or Asian or whatever other culture in itself to get the opportunity or a chance to travel outside. So it is hard indeed, but that doesn't mean that every person's intention is to get a visa or a paper or whatever,
Yes,
so
and we have people that are looking for papers. There are people there. But sometimes people make it sound like once the African person gets paper, they have gold and money begins to fall from the sky. As an African, it doesn't matter whether you have paper or not. You have to fight extra to get what a German or a white person would get a bit easier. As a black person, as an African person, whether you even have the passport, you always need to fight extra.
It's just
so the documents doesn't mean gold. Doesn't mean that money begins to fall from the sky. It just gives you the opportunity to begin to work for your money and not depend on the government to always help you.